Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters. And yes, we are here with our review of Smile 2. Yes, Luke and myself got to check this bad boy out last night, had a little press screening, and yeah, needless to say, this was one that I guess you could say was on our radar. We were intrigued by it. We saw the first one when it came out. It was actually one of our earlier reviews. And yeah, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we thought it was all right. You know, it wasn't like a mind-blowing film, but it wasn't awful either. I think that probably surprised us more than anything. Luke, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would second that, certainly. It wasn't anything bad, certainly, at all, but, like, looking at that film, it was just maybe a little cookie cutter, very mundane. I'd say, didn't really step outside the box too much. You had a psychologist, which is, from my take, the safe play there, kind of getting the ball rolling in terms of how this concept would get going or introduced to an audience. So it just felt something we'd seen before. Obviously, that concept of smiles, something that we've seen in the past, not necessarily verbatim, but very similar. So it just wasn't something that knocked our socks off. It wasn't anything that appeared in our top 10 or anything like that. But a lot of people received it very positively. They were really excited about it.
Yeah, it made like $200 million at the box office, which again, I had to be reminded by one of our fellow pundits that this was initially going to be something that was going straight to streaming. And they thought that it was, they gave it the old Evil Dead treatment. They thought that it was pretty good. So they put it in theaters. And man, when they announced Smile 2, I got to say, I was a bit put off. I was a bit like, okay, yeah, this is just going to turn into that every year franchise film. But no, they waited a year. They gave it some time, and now we're here with it. But since then, we've gotten some more information, obviously, trailers, things like that. And I got to say, I was a bit intrigued. Did show up on our 31 films for October. And yeah, now that we've seen it, I can confidently say that I really, really enjoyed Smile 2. I like this a lot more than Smile, the first one.
Certainly. Looking at this one, it didn't really have my interest, honestly, going into it. It was just kind of there. I didn't know necessarily if this warranted a sequel, but after watching it, I got to say, this one did step outside the box. It felt more unique. It really felt like they were taking some chances here and really putting their own stamp on this one. It wasn't cookie cutter at all. There was, conceptually, it's like, this singer who's very popular, going to be going on tour. And initially looking at it, I was like, it just seems a little gimmicky. It didn't seem like they were maybe going to take a chance and really make that concept count. But honestly, they made that work. They took advantage of the situations of that kind of pop star and what you could be doing, and the kind of predicaments they find themselves in. I suppose they really got a lot of mileage out of this concept.
I agree. Yeah, this was definitely something that when they announced it, that was what I was most excited for. I feel like when you're dealing with an entity like whatever the Smile Demon necessarily is, and seeing just the little pieces that we got from the first one of kind of the awkward and very, I guess you'd call them cringeworthy situations that creature puts its victims through as it tortures them. It was something where it's like, yeah, putting that onto like a celebrity, like a pop star or an influencer, someone whose like entire career is in the public eye. It's like that's a really awesome way to take this. But I was really surprised that it wasn't even just that they ran with. They really took this film to new heights for me in more of an experimental route. Like the camera work in this film was fucking gorgeous. Like I was watching how Parker Finn was just like putting together all of these shots. Like there's a cold open to this, and it is a very different feeling film than what we inevitably get. But man, you could just tell the confidence level has just spiked entirely. It feels like maybe he didn't feel like he had to play it as safe because he's established himself, his movies made some money, and now he doesn't have to worry about the studio maybe breathing down his back so much. Because I just felt like the confidence level from Parker Finn in this was just off the charts.
Yeah, the opening, it was very visceral. It really kind of got you on the edge of your seat. And the way that cold open ends, I mean, I think at that point you're like, everything's on the table here. We really don't know where we're going to go. And one of the big selling points for me in this was kind of the way that they used the gore and the blood there. I think that was really well done. It was certainly jarring at points. They really, really turned the volume up there. I haven't revisited Smile since I initially watched it, but I
No,
can't
neither have I.
remember any of those scenes really kind of sticking out to me, say, oh, that was some really wild gore in that. Now, maybe I do need to go back and watch it. Maybe I'm just something slipping my mind, but I got to say, Smile 2 is chock full of that. They have a lot of interesting usage of that. There's something involving a weight that was pretty jarring, and the way that they kind of use it, I would say, more than once, I guess, in terms of that gore aspect and what you see was really terrifying. I think the usage of that and really finding kind of that flow, they really found a great trajectory for this film. And this being, I know we talk about runtimes, this being over 2 hours, they really made that story count.
They did make the story count. I will admit that, especially I feel like in the first act, there was a bit of a pacing kind of conundrum there for me where it felt like we were kind of really taking our time. But I think because that is the section of the film that is the most familiar to that first Smile, where it's kind of like they're almost reintroducing us again to this. Because it's like, as even though I haven't revisited the first Smile, it's like I get what the thing is and what we're dealing with. We already know, so it almost felt a little redundant there at first, but they kind of quickly moved past that. And I'll say the second and third act of this movie just completely captivated me. What also I was very, very impressed with was, as we're going through here, we know that Kyle Gallner's coming back in some capacity. I love seeing him on screen, but Naomi Scott as Skye Riley, I was really, really impressed with her performance. I thought that she really took herself to some interesting spots. There is a sequence involving, I will just say, her and Ray Nicholson in a car that I fucking loved. I thought that not only was the camera work interesting, the scenario was interesting. They've kind of been teasing this moment throughout the entire film. And I just thought her performance in that and in the rest of the film was just electric. She was so like unlikable at times, but sympathetic, and then you really started to feel for her. It's just she really hit it on all points for me. I was very impressed.
And looking at it, is like you're saying, that one scene that you zeroed in, for me, that scene really turned up the volume. I think it was so well done. I used the term visceral already. I really felt that in that scene as well. And Naomi Scott's not afraid to get her hands dirty in this. And
No.
I absolutely love it. She really, when you talk about turning that volume up, she absolutely does it. She is not afraid to bring that terror to the screen from a very psychological aspect. I think looking at when I talk about this pop star aspect and it initially seeming a little gimmicky to me, but then they get a lot of mileage out of it. I love that idea here. When you go back to the first one, psychologist, it seems like the safe route to go in terms of introducing this concept. But when you look at this pop star aspect here, they really take it, they deep dive it into more of a psychological aspect where you're so popular, everybody loves you, but you do feel alone. And I think that's so terrifying when you're dealing with this concept of Smile, where you're looking over your shoulder, you're paranoid beyond belief. They really made usage out of it here, and Naomi Scott was the perfect casting here. There are just some scenes that captivated me where you're saying it ran a little bit long in the beginning. I think her performance really did it for me enough where 1 minute we're fine, next minute we're not. And that captivated me so much to be like, I found her character so interesting and I was so along for that ride. Even when we don't like her, we somehow like her. So,
Yeah.
I think she just had that charisma. She's got the chops for this. It was just such a great casting there for Skye Riley that you wanted to go through this thrill ride with her. And honestly, there were points in this where I had no idea where this was going.
Yeah, I agree, especially once we get into the third act and there's a particular sequence that happens that kind of carts us into the start of the third act, and we're in a very different place than we were through most of this film, and it's just like, now what? How does this work? Are we gonna spend the rest of the film here? And then as it starts to go, it's just like, well, how? What are we doing? Like everything's falling apart. Like it's amazing. It's intense. It really, I think, like the best thing is you could say is that Smile 2 really just jams everything into full throttle and just like lets you go forward with this concept. And again, the confidence displayed by not only the cast but Parker Finn, just as a filmmaker, this makes me way bigger of a Parker Finn fan. Like I said, Smile was fine, it was good, it was a very safe, I think that's the best way you put it there, very safe outing. But this just really shows off his style and what he can bring as a filmmaker, both visually and narratively. I think that this is a much stronger film than the first, and I think that everybody shines here. There's a lot of supporting cast that works here. Everybody kind of gets a little bit of their moments. Even Ray Nicholson, who I was kind of concerned through most of the film because we see him, you see him in the trailer, and I'll just say, like, I guess not really a spoiler. I thought, is he gonna get a moment to speak, or is this gonna just be kind of? And then obviously something happens, and it's like, wow, this is fucking great. And I gotta say, it's I know it's tropey. I know everybody, and he probably would hate to hear this if he ever watched this review, but it's like you could see so much of his dad coming out of him in that scene. Like there were so many things in the cadence of his voice. It's just like, oh, you've got it, buddy. You have that Nicholson like cadence, that charm, that gruffness. I'm excited to see where he goes in the future.
And I think that's a huge compliment when you're looking at an actor like Jack Nicholson and his caliber. I mean, we know his resume, obviously, especially in the horror scene. So to look at Ray Nicholson and say, oh man, he can be in that conversation after he gets a little more seasoning. I was rather intrigued by his performance here. And I was excited every time that he was on screen, even non-verbally. I think he did steal some scenes there. So I found all around rather intriguing. I think toward the third act there, I did start to feel the runtime a little bit. But I will say, as we're kicking off, there are some things in that third act that are just going to absolutely melt your mind. It's like you can't catch your breath because so much stuff is going on. So, you know, I'll say as we move toward the end, I think if you start piecing things together, you can kind of start seeing where they're going to go. And I think maybe they pulled a punch or two a little bit for me. So I felt, it didn't pack as much of a punch as I would have liked to, especially when we were dealing with such a thrill ride throughout the film. But I don't think it killed it at all. It was just kind of, you can kind of see it coming if you're really thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think that for me, where I didn't have as much of that in the third act, I feel like we're very flip flopped here. Where it's like the first act, I was
I
very
think
like
so.
eerie, and then you're a little, yeah, but like I felt like the last couple of scenes, like the last few frames of this movie, just were like, wow, that's a fucking way to end this, because the implication that it leaves you on, and our buddy Jake was there at the screening, so we were just like talking to each other, and I'm like, the implication of this, is this what you got out of that? Because that's what I got. And it's we'll have to talk about it after this because we didn't mention it, but I I just don't know where you would continue this if they wanted to do another Smile, because that feels so big. That feels so like all the stakes are kind of like come to this point where it's like, wow, how is this going to move forward in anything? So it's something that's very ballsy, very different, and I loved it. I will say, if you're a Substance fan, there are a couple of shots towards the end of this film that will certainly remind you of that. It's very Substance light, but I wouldn't say it goes nearly as hard as that. But it was very much a stark reminder of that. So overall, I got to say, I was very surprised and impressed with Smile 2. I definitely could see myself watching this one again, as to where I didn't really have a desire to watch the first. So I think that this one is a good bit of fun. As much as I want to say, like, you could skip this and just go support Terrifier 3, I have to go with my heart of hearts here and just say you should check out Smile 2 if you're interested. Or if you saw the first Smile and you thought it was just fine, you definitely should check this one out because I think this is going to be way more your movie. I'm going to give Smile 2 a recommend.
Yeah, this is a perfect October release. Head out to the theater. It's getting chilly out. You can go have some fun with this one. I don't know necessarily if I would put it even mention the substance, just because you're hitting the heavy bag. You're not shadow boxing when it comes to that film. But I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, so I don't want to get expectations too high there. But I think this one was rather intriguing. They get a lot of mileage out of here. There's some really phenomenal scenes from Naomi Scott just from a performance standpoint. So I think that is just enough to really she turns it up. I got to be honest, she absolutely turns it up. I'm excited to see what she does returning. If she returns to horror, I am all about it. Ray
Oh,
Nicholson puts
yeah.
on a great performance. I think this one, as you look at that ending, yes, it would be rather intriguing to see what they do. The possibilities are endless. Now, coming out of Smile, I would have said, I don't know if I need a sequel to this. That's how I was going into this. Coming out of Smile 2, I absolutely need a sequel to this. So
Okay.
this one
Hell
for
yeah.
me is a recommend.
Fuck yeah, dude. I love hearing that because yeah, I was very I was very intrigued by that ending. It just we'll have to discuss a little bit afterwards. And if you've seen the film, feel free to mention it, and we might respond to you. Just make sure you put spoilers for everybody as we get into the weekend here. I would hate to spoil that. But yeah, guys, I was very, very blown away. I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, it's again, I'm not saying that this is like an incredible, phenomenal, absolutely over the top film, but it's impressive to see something again tackled like a concept that's tackled again with so much confidence from the same team. It really does show that it's like, yeah, once you kind of can really let yourself loose a little bit and really let your chops go, it's like you can really deliver something exceptional. And I think that Smile 2 is a success story. I hope it does well. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for this review. Definitely let us know down below if you're planning on checking out Smile 2. Are all the good reviews starting to turn you a little bit? Were you like us? Or were you on board the second you walked out of Smile? So, alrighty, until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, slash ass. 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 Splattercast, slash ass.